Hi, I'm Mrs. Booth, and I'm so pleased that you're here today to learn alongside me science. It's my favourite subject, and who couldn't love more science in the rainforest? We are going to be, over the next few lessons, looking at rainforest ecosystems. That's all the living things that live in a rainforest and how they work together. So, this is the main things that we are going to be learning. What is an ecosystem? How can we classify organisms in an ecosystem? Food chains and energy transfers, and how change can impact those ecosystems. Don't worry about all of that now. This is where we're going to get to by the end of our lessons. Today, let's just focus on what is an ecosystem. We will begin most lessons with this screen. It will tell you all you will need for your learning today. So if you haven't already, go and grab a pencil or pen and a paper or the workbook that your teacher has asked you to work in. You're probably going to want to press pause while you do this. Let's get our brains worked up and warmed up with a challenge. I'm going to ask you to do a scavenger hunt in your home, looking and searching for things which are living and things which are non-living. In your book, you might want to draw a quick chart, just like I have on the screen. Remember, living things are things which breathe, things which move, things which can reproduce, have babies, and things which grow. Breathe, move, reproduce, grow. Things that are non-living might be things that used to live, but they don't anymore. So when I say go, give yourself about 3 minutes. Doesn't need to be very long. I'm going to make sure I've got mine sorted too. You can go and find things which are living and non-living around your home. Or you could just look outside your window if you want to. On your marks, get set, go. Good luck. Well, I hope you had a good run around the house and you didn't disturb too many people while you were doing it. Here is what I found whilst we were scavenging around the house. When I was looking for living things, I found it quite difficult. I actually don't have that many living things at the moment in the house, but there are some big things that are living. There's my son. He was currently eating an ice cream outside. My dog, Lexi. A nice plant that I was given at the end of last year. Stick insects, which are definitely living, but I don't think you'll be able to see them in that picture. They're pretty good at camouflaging themselves on their leaves. And my son's favourite thing at the moment, which are sea monkeys, which we have to feed once a week to make sure they stay alive. The non-living things, well, I could have filled my screen with them. Lots of them were made by man-made materials like plastic, or there was some metal, but the ones I chose were my favourites. So I've got my favourite teddy, which is sitting in my living room. There's Gromit in my hallway. There's a balloon, which I had to think a little bit about because it definitely moves, but it doesn't grow by itself and it definitely doesn't breathe, so it had to go in the non-living. Then there's a laptop and some colour pens. A stick is one of the things my son loves to bring in the house. I've got lots of them, and the dog likes to hide them as well. But it definitely isn't living. It might have been living once when it was part of a tree, but now it's been broken off and it hasn't got any more air and it cannot breathe by itself, then it is no longer a living thing. Have a look in your list. Is there any other things that you found that were tricky or maybe perhaps once were living that you could have moved to one side? Well done. Great start to our science. So, we just recapped some words that we were using when we were in the infants, living and non-living, but obviously science is filled with fantastic vocabulary that can sometimes be a little bit tricky to remember or to use. We're going to focus on 3 words this lesson that we will start to get used to while we're using in our science. The first word is organism. Say it after me, organism. Come on, say it out loud. If you don't say it out loud, it's not going to go into that brain. Try it again. Organism. Well done. An organism is a living thing, an individual living thing. That's you, and it's me. It's my dog. It's the plant. It's a sunflower that you grew the other day. An organism is an individual living thing. The next word, habitat. Come on, you say it. Habitat. Brilliant. A habitat, hopefully you've come across that before. Do you know what a habitat is? A habitat is a place where an animal lives. Yes, a habitat could be a river. What animals might live in a river? Fish, yes. Or it could be on land. Different animals live in different habitats. And our final word, which I'm not sure that all of you will be quite so confident, is ecosystem. Say it, ecosystem. There might be some parts of that word that you've heard before. If you think you know this word, why don't you just jot it down in your notebook or on a piece of paper now, and when we come to it later, you can see whether it was quite what you were expecting it to be. So, what do all organisms need to survive? What does organism mean again? A living thing, an individual living thing. What do all living things need to survive? Got some pictures here to give you some clues. Have a think. What do all organisms, living things, need to survive? That's right. We need food to keep our energy up. Sometimes if I've not had some food, I will be really, really tired as an organism. Food is really important for all organisms to stay alive. Water is key for survival. Space to live in, enough space to grow and to be able to get their food is really important. And finally, shelter. Often when we think of shelter, we think of our own homes. And if we think about where animals live, we might be thinking about habitats. So what does a habitat need to do to help an organism survive? Have a look at these two animals. Would they live in the same habitat, the same place that they would live in? Do you think they'd be in the same place? No, of course not, because a fish would live in a habitat where there was lots of water. Fish do not survive outside of water. They need their water to survive, and that's where all their food is. A penguin, however, lives in a colder habitat outside of the water. It does swim in water and fish in the water, so it needs to be close to water, but it definitely needs its rocks as well. So a place that an organism lives in will be different for different animals or different organisms. Let's bring it back to the rainforest and have a look at this next animal. There is the magnificent jaguar, one of the key predators, killers of other animals in the rainforest. You'll find some of these are in the Amazon. So if we look carefully and use our observation skills as scientists, what can you see that this habitat gives the jaguar so that it can survive? Look very closely. Did you see the water? The river and the moist air in the rainforest helps the jaguar to survive, and its habitat really does support it. There's lots of rivers and water for the jaguar. It's got space. Look at that magnificent creature up on that tree trunk. It has space to live in, but it also has space that it can go and look at lots of other prey and be there and safe in its environment. And there is a bit more safety there, ready to pounce on its food. Now we can't see that jaguar there with any food, but it looks quite healthy to me. So I'm going to infer that there is definitely food in this habitat of the rainforest for the jaguar. Now you have a look at the scarlet macaw. What can you see that the habitat provides to help its survival? How does the place of the rainforest the scarlet macaw live help it to survive? Have a good look. It's got lots of food, hasn't it? Berries and nuts are some of its favourite things to eat, and there is loads of these found in the rainforest. It's got places that it can live, shelter in the trees for it to grow its nests, space to fly, and water to drink. The rainforest is a habitat filled with items and organisms that help the scarlet macaw survive. So, I'm going to ask you to go into your paper or go into your workbook and now try and write these sentences. A habitat is the animals live. A habitat is the animals live. If it helps, you could say the word out loud as I say A habitat is the animals live. It gives animals and There are some pictures there for you to remember to help you. It gives animals and A habitat is the animals live. It gives animals and Pause the video here if you haven't got that written down yet. It's fine, you don't need to try and rush. Pause it and think about what words you can use to fill in the blanks. And there are some pictures down below that might help. So, a habitat is the place. Can we see that? Just move me a little bit. There we go. A habitat is the place animals live. The place that an animal lives is its habitat. It gives animals food, water, shelter, and space. Check your work now. Make sure you've got the right words in the right place. It doesn't matter if your food, water, shelter, and space is in different order, but as long as you've got the right words. A habitat is the place animals live. It gives animals food, water, shelter, and space. Well done. A great start to our science learning. So, if a habitat is the place an animal lives, what on earth is an ecosystem? There's a clue. Had a guess? It's definitely got something to do with plants and animals. What do those other pictures mean? If you wrote a definition down earlier, here is what it means. An ecosystem is a community, a group together of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Remember, organism is a living thing. What do you think that prefix micro might mean? Teeny tiny, tiny, tiny. Something you cannot see with your eyes, something you'd have to use a microscope to see. So an ecosystem is a community or group of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Have a go with me. An ecosystem is a community or group of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. There are those pictures again to remind us that tiny, tiny green thing on the end is a little bit of algae, tiny, 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 that we cannot see but grows and is in it all around us. So, have a look at this picture. What kind of ecosystem do you think this might be? Yes, it's a pond. A pond is an ecosystem. There are plants and animals that live together, and there are tiny algae in the water and bacteria in the water that all work together, and they live in areas. So some of the animals might live in the habitat that is the rocks, and some might live in the habitat that's the river, the pond bank. But they all together create an ecosystem working together of the pond. So an habitat is one animal's place, and an ecosystem is lots of animals grouped together, plants and microorganisms and groups of habitats together. What about this ecosystem? Have an idea? This is a grassland ecosystem. You can see the fox and the birds, and there's buffalo in the background. And underground, if you have a look carefully, you can see a vole and mice and a snake. There are so many animals that live in our ecosystems and the different types of them. But in this grassland, you can see some live above in the air, some live below in the earth. And these are all special to this one ecosystem. Would you find all of the animals in the grassland in the pond? No, because it wouldn't give all the things that they need to survive. Different ecosystems will have different animals in them. So let's have a closer look at one of the ecosystems. This is a coral reef. What can you see? Scientists, especially biologists who study the living world, need to look really closely at the world around them and observe. What is it that you can see on this coral reef? So, when I was looking at this coral reef, what I noticed were there were plants. There was seaweed and seagrass. I couldn't see anything else. It looked more rocky than anything else, but there are small parts of seaweed and seagrass in this coral reef. Animals. There was a turtle, some tropical fish. I'm not an expert on fish, so I couldn't tell you exactly which each one of those types of fish are, but they're definitely tropical with their bright colours as they're swimming by. And a crab. If you look in between the rocks, you will see. And I wasn't sure in the distance whether that was quite a shark, but I'm going to leave it off just in case. The habitats that I could see where there were rocks where some of the crabs and the fish were swimming. There's the reef itself, the whole area. And then there was the ocean, the blue in the background, where I think there might be that shark. I think it's that one over there. But we'll see. And finally, tiny microorganisms. Well, there's algae in water. And there's plankton. Plankton are the tiny, tiny, tiny bits of fish, and they drift. They're microscopic organisms, and they drift and float in the water. And often whales and bigger fish use their special filters to take all of the plankton in and all the water out, and that's what they eat. So I've made a list here just from observing as a scientist, as a biologist. I have been able to look at this picture in detail and start to look at the components, the parts that make an ecosystem, the plants, seagrass, seaweed, animals, habitats, and the microorganisms. Now, I'm going to give you a task. I would like you to look very carefully at this ecosystem, the rainforest ecosystem. Can you find the different plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms that would be in a rainforest? They will be different to our reef ecosystem because of the environment. So, in your book, and you'll be able to pause in a moment while you do this, and you'll be able to look at the screen. Can you now list? I would put a little subtitle, plants, and then all the plants that you can see, animals, and all the animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Off you go. Have a pause. So, looking carefully at this ecosystem, this group, community of animals, plants, habitats, and microorganisms, what did you find? I found tall trees, tiny shrubs, a lily on that pond. There looked like there was some kind of river weed further in the background, flowers, and vines going up the trees. The animals that I could see, and I'm sure that you will have found different animals, looking really closely now, I've already spotted some different types of frogs and snakes. I found the parrots, a toucan, a lemur, jaguar, butterflies, ladybirds, frogs. Did you find anything else? Any other animals? Definitely different types of birds. habitats. There's the river itself that's going through the middle of the picture. There's the canopy, the top layer of the rainforest in the soil where all lots of the bugs are. The river bank itself is a habitat. Perhaps you could have the rainforest floor would be its own habitat. And then the microorganisms. Yes, there's going to be more algae because there's lots of water. Fungi, which is bacteria, that kind of mold that kind of grows, and bacteria itself. How did you do? Is there any extras that you needed to add or any that you hadn't quite caught? Great work. So, now that you've done your list of a rainforest ecosystem, let's get you defining what an ecosystem is. What is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a community or group of and An ecosystem is a community of and Gave you a clue there. An ecosystem is a community or group of. Pause it if you need to write your sentences. It's fine to pause this video and then we'll go through the answers together. So, an ecosystem is a community of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Remembering that microorganism is a living thing that's tiny. Well done. We have finished our lesson for today. Can you tell me what an organism is? Yes, a living thing, an individual living thing. You and I are both organisms. Habitat? Don't just look in your books, it's the place that animals live. And an ecosystem, the community of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms together. Thank you for working so hard today. Our next lesson, when we will be looking at animals in a little bit more detail and how we can classify, group them together. See you next time. Bye.